Hello and welcome to episode 4 of the Read the Manga podcast with Zach and Corey. I'm Zach, this is Corey, and today we are going to be talking about the extremely influential dystopian post-apocalyptic cyberpunk extravaganza that is Akira. I'm sure most of you have probably been familiar with the movie, but there's actually a manga that was released. The manga is really fucking good. So
It
we're
came
going to go ahead and talk
first.
about that. Yeah, the manga came first. They were actually made kind of like simultaneously, which was
Yeah,
interesting.
see, it's interesting because it kind of doubles back to our conversation about the One Piece live action, and when you take, in correlation with Game of Thrones,
Yeah.
to have the source materials, uh, you know, creative mind to work on an adaptation, that's like a great plus towards the adaptation. But it causes issues in some ways.
Yeah.
But honestly, like I think Akira's exception to the rule.
Well, yeah, because he wrote the manga from 1982 to 1990. The movie was released in 1988, and because he directed the movie too, which is crazy.
He
Like
directed, he wrote it.
he demanded complete creative control.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so like yeah, so the movie was released in 1988. So he was like kind of writing the manga and making the movie at the same time. But it's interesting how even though the movie was shorter, how many of the concepts were in the movie eventually made it into the manga. Like from a bare bones perspective, the stories are pretty much the same. And so many of the visuals that he uses in the manga are also used in the movie,
Well, there's
but
also
like in a
8 years.
different
Oh,
context.
6 years.
Yeah,
Because
eight
it
years.
started in 82, right?
Yeah, 82 to 1990. So 8 years of serialization.
But when the movie came out, it was 88. So
Yes.
you have to think that production on it probably started like a year or two before it was released.
Probably like
So
85, 86, right? Because it's an anime film and it
so
was the
he
most
had he had
expensive
about
anime film of
five
all
years
time.
of content. I mean, the way it gets broken up into reading over here, especially I read the American version, so it was one flipped and
Oh,
covered
yeah.
all that. But they broke it down into like 39 chapters when it's
Yeah.
like more like each volume or something.
Because
But
they
what
were they were using the release
yeah.
like method of like American comics where they go like issue by issue. So it like was kind of like the it's almost like the manga was like transferred into the Western comic art form.
Yeah, like what I think what would be important to look at, and I didn't quite do that yet, but it was something that I think would be interesting, would be seeing exactly when production started and then seeing what was released leading up to that. And that would give you a gauge on what actually changed between
Yeah, because he
what
said he didn't want to do the movie until he knew what the ending of the manga was going to be, so that the endings can be pretty much the same.
we
So,
I read it and
mhm,
then I watched it.
okay,
And I was like, okay, so I feel like reading it then watching it kind of gave. Did you read it then watch it, or watch it then read it? What was your
I
order?
I read the first couple volumes and then I watched the movie and then I read the rest of the volumes. So
Okay.
all of the stuff that happens like after Akira does his little brain explosion and they're all like in the wasteland and shit, like I read that after I had already watched the movie.
Okay, so that probably was still a little bit of a surprise to you because it was like, oh, now it's Mad Max.
I know, right? I was actually going to say Mad Max. And like, but even watching the movie, a lot of the vehicular combat was very reminiscent of Mad Max for me. So like
Oh,
I was
I love the film and the fact that the motorcycle aspects are kept throughout most of it.
Mhm. that
Um,
that
I'm a sucker
relationship
for that
between
stuff.
Kaneda and his bike.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's kind of funny. We uh we did the Yu Hakusho episode not too long ago,
Mhm.
you know, and Okarano, that's different. But like, it's kind of that having a, you know, I guess I feel like maybe Kaneda could have been an influence on Yusuke as a character, or it's
Yeah.
just kind of that trope of even Josuke falls into it. The delinquent Onizuka type where riding a motorcycle or being a delinquent, not giving a crap about what anybody says,
But
and
they're
it's like there's some,
charming.
and I think it's because it's ultimately they're more of like a lawful like a like a chaotic good. They're
Mhm.
not they're not lawful good, which would be like they fall in line with like the law, but they're chaotic good in the fact that they go the beat of their own drum and ultimately you know, we get the benefit as the reader from the author by them making a sympathetic or empathetic character, an easy to relate to character that just so happens to fall in line with a lot of what we believe are like positive things. But
Yeah.
then it's funny to see them be that kind of character where it's like we know that Kaneda's not a bad guy, but at the same time they're like totally cool with beating the shit out of each other on motorcycles. They never, like in the film they say most of the guys, and even in the manga they say most of the guys Kaneda's group runs into ends up in the hospital, not like outright killed.
Yeah.
Kaneda in the film makes it very clear to Tetsuo like they don't do that until Tetsuo takes that step forward. Then Kaneda goes and tries to get Tetsuo. But what's funny is that even through all that, Kaneda's doing it more out of his duty as the leader of the gang and as Tetsuo's friend in his thing of revenge for Yamagata than
Yeah.
so much he has a personal thing against Tetsuo. And that's what's funny is like the manga, like reading it and then watching it, it's funny to see that they kept Kaneda throughout the whole thing. Whereas in the manga, you kind of get that the Wasteland stuff opens with that one guy who's like the Yusuke of our series is gone,
Yeah,
so we're left.
everyone thinks Kaneda's dead after that. Oh, we didn't do a spoiler warning for this, but as anyone who listens to this should know, we're going to spoil the shit out of the
Yeah, there's
series.
and keep in mind this is from the 80s, you know.
Yeah.
If like, we've all been saturated with Akira more than we know. Uh Shoot, I just went back and reread some My Hero Academia because the most recent arc of that has had so many visual cues that it took from both the film and the manga of Akira. And Horikoshi is a crazy dude.
Oh, really? Is that the
Like,
author?
yes. And it's crazy how like influential Akira is, especially since one thing that I got from it was like, as far as manga goes, I don't know if it's just that early 80s, late 70s charm of like they didn't develop that definitive kind of shonen kind of art style. It has a unique art to it that gives it the charm that
Who,
allows a
Akira?
lot of this. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
that's,
the art is beautiful. And like one of the things that I love about it is that so much of it is just imagery. It's just
oh, yeah.
pictures of cityscapes. It's just pictures of like them racing on their light cycles. I call, it's not Tron, it's not light cycles, but they're basically light cycles. But
No, oh, for real. I mean,
but yeah, no, like so much of Otomo's artwork is so visual. And this before I'd seen the movie before, but I hadn't watched it recently, and I was reading the first couple volumes of the manga, and I'm just like, this guy is a born filmmaker. Like he's
yeah.
one of the few guys that like just based on his paneling and the composition of his shots is like this guy should be working in film. This guy there's certain manga artists that have a way of making still imagery flow as if it's moving. And Otomo completely has that. And it makes complete sense that he ended up focusing on anime after Akira. It seems like manga was just kind of something that like he was locked into and kind of like made his bones on, and then kind of like transitioned into the whole anime thing later and became much more of a filmmaker, which was, I would argue, what he was from the start.
Well, actually, like, it's interesting you say that because it looked like, unlike, Oda or a lot of the other guys, they made their series and then they had to prove their series worth, and then the anime got presented to them. Whereas
Yeah.
this guy, he wasn't just a manga artist. He was like, I want to be in film. So he
Yeah.
actually started working on small stuff. Like he was a character designer for like one series. So that, because the whole, like how you described his art could also be applied to iShield 21's artist, Murata, the
Yeah,
guy who
Yusuke
also does One
Murata.
Punch Man.
Yeah.
They're both. But see, here's the thing: if we're gonna
Spoiler
put
alert
it
for
in
next
that,
episode.
oh yeah, right. If we're gonna put it in that sense of like being able to encapsulate the feeling of movement, um, and I don't think just encapsulating the feeling of movement, like watching a stand rush and JoJo's and all that, or reading it. Well, reading it is the most important part, but like especially with like One Punch Man by Murata or iShield 21, he gets the movement down. Like you could see it, the everything happening like in the anime. as you read it. You could put the panels to each other and it's essentially a flip book. People have done that. But what I think is different about Otomo, yes, is he's a filmmaker. Like, honestly, I was just like, wow, if you are somebody who's not into anime or manga, but you love a 2001, this could be your thing. Like, it's like there are some just panels where like the way he would reflect like how the city's just been taken by the water, and the water's there through the reflections of the clouds on the sky. So it gives it like a like, you see Tetsuo just standing there with a throne, and it makes it look like, like the peak of Olympus, like the mountaintops, like they're above the clouds, they're gods, and it's like that kind of imagery that, is like big brain. You're looking at that imagery even through your background. Everything has like a theme to it. Every panel shows something, especially like how he does scale, like the moon part. I was kind of I read that, and then I saw the movie. I was like, I don't think they're gonna do the moon part. And then like, maybe if I go back, I'll be like, well, it happened later. But but that, like, a display of force to show how powerful a character is, doing it that way, just like, you want me to go to the moon? All right.
Yeah. Like, Tetsuo essentially becomes a god by the end of the series. Like, he's that powerful.
Yeah, and the way he shows that, like, you get the One Punch Man moon scene.
Yeah, it reminded me of that.
Yeah, like,
yeah, Yusuke probably was probably looking at Akira when he wrote that scene, or drew that scene. I mean,
it's insane. Like, even in Cyberpunk, they just put the Akira bike in it. Like,
oh, the Cyberpunk game.
Yeah, you go and you find they put one of the developers of a game series, KG something, but he's like an actual guy who makes games, and he's the guy you go and buy the Akira bike off of.
Oh, gotcha. That's interesting. I still haven't played that game. My newest piece of hardware is a Nintendo Switch, and try running Cyberpunk on that.
You play Arc on it. I just see how that runs, but that's buggy on the PC. But as far as I mean, you could look up a list of things that I've taken from Akira, and it's just like
it's endless.
It's as influential as JoJo's Bizarre Adventure or Batman. I mean, what's funny is
I think it fits like
the guy who did Akira worked on a Batman thing.
Yeah, he did. I saw that. What was it exactly? It was like it wasn't Gotham Knight, was it?
It was. I love his picture on Wikipedia. He's just like,
oh yeah, it looks dope. He's just like, I am a much better artist than you.
What I loved about Akira, though, was like, one thing about it was like he would take it pretty serious. It was a rated R thing, and like,
it was a seinen,
yeah, but I mean, like, it was more tame than Bokurano, like, in some ways.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of before the time when like people were doing that, and he definitely is somebody that's not going for shock for the sake of shock. Like, all of the violence in Akira has like legitimate impact. Like, when you see somebody's head explode, it's usually a really important character, and you actually like get the impact because like you feel the weight of that character's death. Whereas like for Scrubs, he mostly relegates their deaths to like off screen.
Yeah, like, or he'll pull it back, like when Tetsuo gets out of his room and the doctor tells him, go back in your room in the anime.
Yeah.
And he just like he just like threw a fit, and you just see like an arm fall off the ceiling. And I'm like, oh man, like,
the chubby kid from Bokurano would hate Akira. There's so many red shirts in it.
Yeah, he would be like, this is a tragedy. I'd be like, but they won in the end. He'd be like, no.
Yeah, like, but like even the scenes where they're chasing each other down the sewer, or like they're doing some big action set piece, which like there are a lot of them. So many like random people die in violent ways, and I always notice that like Kaneda and Kay and all of them are always wearing such thick plot armor. And like, it's okay because like it makes sense for the action scene. Like, I don't mind it, but like there's so many scenes where I'm just like, okay, so literally only the heroes can like shoot somebody accurately. Like it's like kind of the Star Wars thing where like all the stormtroopers are terrible shots, and like whenever
These are 15-year-olds on top of it.
yeah, they like
Like,
they can't tell their ass from their head
but
most
here's
of
the
the
funny
time.
thing is, one, this takes place in the distant future of 2019.
Yeah, I wonder
So
what that year's
it
gonna be
was
like.
made in 82, assuming what things would look like now.
Yeah.
And what my thing is, like, it's like the stormtrooper thing,
Mhm.
but they make it very clear throughout the series, like, that the colonel is pretty much the only competent member of any fighting force out there. And
Yeah.
Chioko, who, like, I'm pretty sure she didn't even show up that much in the movie.
No, I don't think she was in the movie at all.
Yeah, wow. Which is weird because she was like one of my favorite characters.
She was like girl Brock Samson.
Yeah, essentially. Like when she goes up against a bunch of those Akira cultists and they're all like, run away. And she's just like, nope, and just chases them down. Like I actually like had the Brock Samson song go through my head a couple of times when she just like killed people, because I was like, I don't know why,
But yeah,
that would make Kay Dean. And that would make Kaneda.
I feel like Kai would be Dean, right?
No, because it would be Kay and yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. I guess Kaneda would be Hank because he's pretty competent. But that's the thing I love about Kaneda, that he's got that kind of like Han Solo charming rogue thing where it's like he really just wants to like chill with this gang, make money, and occasionally bang a chick. And he gets like wrapped up into this whole thing, but kind of just takes it in stride just because he's trying to bang this chick. So he ends up like being essentially a hero for the sole reason that he just joined this place because like he had the hots for the chick that was like part of the terrorist organization.
Yeah, and that's like, what was it? It's that and like Tetsuo too. Like he has some weird, like, very basic reasoning for like it's kind of like a shonen character reasoning. I have to help my friend / avenge my friend / try and get the girl.
Yeah.
But like that's
It's a
why I
very
like the
relatable
manga
plot
though,
line.
is it's like he's standing on the corner of the building and I'm like, oh, our boy got. All right. Anyways. And then like you're just like, oh, all right. That, like, once the ghosty stuff started happening, I'm like, oh, so we're gonna do Interstellar now. Okay, so he'll probably come back. But Interstellar is another series that totally looked like you could totally argue, like, if whoever wrote Interstellar was aware of like Akira and all that, like they read it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because they do the whole like weird talking to people outside of dimensions thing and that too. Like
Yeah. Where it's like with Akira, you kind of get to that point where like when you see stuff that's influenced by it, it's like, is it influenced by Akira or is it influenced by the stuff that's ripping off Akira? Because so many things have influenced Akira, that so many of the scenes and visuals and motifs in Akira have been replicated so much that you can't really trace a line of influence anymore. It's like, okay, are we ripping off Akira or are we ripping off The Matrix, which ripped off Akira? Are we ripping off Akira or are we ripping off, you know what I mean?
Like that, there's a trope that's used in a lot of things where it's like you have a dumb character in a comedy series become super intelligent,
Mm-hmm.
and then they become a jerk and almost break the fabric of reality, and then they become dumb at the end of the episode.
Flowers for Algernon, right? That was
No.
the first one.
No.
What?
No, I'm talking like they use it in like in modern stuff. That's a trope used a lot where it's normally you'll take a character who's unintelligent, make them way too intelligent, and then they become a problem.
Give me an example.
Let's see. Regular show.
Okay. Never watched it.
Yeah, they get to a point where Rigby just starts drinking this juice that makes him so smart that he can only talk in Latin, and like they almost destroy the universe by getting to the fundamental itty-bittiness of it. But it's like something I've seen all over the place in a lot of different stuff. It's a very easy premise to throw into a show when you have a doofus character and you make them too intelligent for their own good.
But did
did
Flowers for Algernon start that though?
But
did it invent that trope? Because it might have.
Well, I mean, that's the thing though, is like, is that the trope we're looking at? Because like, if that's the case, then we might be onto something. Flowers for Algernon might have influenced Akira. Wait, which came out first?
Flowers for Algernon. I think that was the 60s.
Then yes. So
Wait,
Akira is Flowers for Algernon,
but
except
who's
with
the
like
dumb
people getting
character
spoiled.
becomes super intelligent though? Are you talking about Tetsuo?
Well, it's not the dumb character per se, but it's just now they usually use a dumb character to do it. But
Yeah.
essentially, like like the Worms episode with Fry, that didn't quite get
Yeah.
to Akira level, but like it was still getting beyond to that level. It's like I don't know. It's just I've seen it used in certain things, and just seeing Akira and all that, I'm like, huh, like. So a lot of the stuff I've seen where like it's just like those characters that somehow get psychic powers from becoming too smart and like almost ruining things. I wonder if this probably has something to do with that. But it's pretty common. I'm surprised you haven't seen it. I've seen it like at least 5
Yeah.
or 6 times.
I couldn't really recall because like when you say that, like I think of like that like Flowers for Algernon kind of like Charlie Day Always Sunny thing where the the dumb character gets some pills or whatever that makes him super smart and becomes a pompous dick.
Yeah, but in a lot of cases too, people will add psychic powers to it.
I guess they kind of go together like peanut butter and chocolate, right? But like that's the thing. I would
As
argue
long as
that
we're only using 10% of our brain in whatever world that is.
God, I still need to see Lucy. But Tetsuo doesn't really get smarter though. Like he has like the crazy powers and stuff, but he doesn't get any more
Oh no,
self-awareness.
that's just what gets me is like, the trope is kind of flawed in that sense if it is related to it, because the point of the series isn't so much about it's just about giving like, I think the problem was like Tetsuo got way too much power way too quickly for someone at his age, and he already had a chip on his shoulder before he had the powers, so that didn't help it.
Yeah, it was almost like his unlocking of his psychic powers were kind of analogous to like a bad trip where he's kind of like having to confront what's actually going on in his own mind, and it's stuff that he's ran from his entire life, like his inferiority complex, his relationship with Kaneda, his relationship with women. Like he's kind of just in this
Oh
mode.
yeah, his abandonment issues.
Exactly. Tetsuo is actually a really interesting character in that regard, and I feel that so much of what he goes through mentally is just his own resistance to self-analysis and his own inability to like comprehend that he is not hot shit even though he thinks he is.
And I think that's why it's always refreshing to see Kaneda show up and just put him in his place.
Yeah, still get a
Like,
rise out of him.
oh look at you, you're a leader of this pile of trash. Good for you. And he's
Yeah.
just like, I just can't ever get a win. He's like, well, you're cheating.
Yeah, because and Kaneda has that natural charisma and leadership that Tetsuo will never have. He kind of ends up in that position because he becomes like super
Well,
powerful.
and here's the problem though, is like Kai and Yamagata are supposed to be the integral aspect of that too. Like Kai is the smallest member of their group, but he's like the spunkiest one and still fights to the very end. He doesn't
Yeah,
let Kaneda's leadership get to him. But
yeah,
it's also stated
because
that
he knows his
Tetsuo,
place.
well, and I don't even think it's like even just knowing their plays. I think it's just like, he just doesn't think about that shit. And
Yeah,
it's the same with Yamagata. Like Yamagata's like, did you really do these things? Like, why? Like, what is the purpose? Like Yamagata honestly was just kind of like, let's just go find something to do. There's some guys riding around, they're jerks. Let's go beat them up. Like he
yeah,
was the most normal guy of the group, and I think that's why he got first. Was because it's like you need to take out the straight man, because Kaneda's not the straight man. He's like the super charismatic like plot armor guy, so he can do whatever he wants. He doesn't care.
yeah. He's kind of a
Whereas like,
rogue,
yeah,
even though he's
but
the main character, allegedly or assumedly.
I mean, honestly, I think the manga probably more so. I liked it. I don't know. The anime, the film was just phenomenal. Like the fact that was all hand drawn, everything. Some of that stuff looked straight CG. Like,
Oh, it was beautiful.
but the manga I appreciate in the feeling that I felt like Kay was significantly more of a significant character. Like she got more prominence, I think, and I
She's
think
a lot more involved.
yeah, it was refreshing to see her just go around be an action girl, That
Mhm.
stuff was pretty cool. Like the stuff without Kaneda was funny because it's like I feel like if you just keep thinking about how he's a 15-year-old kid, because like when you're a teenager and you're reading Akira, you're like, man, this guy's so cool. But then like when you're like a 27-year-old dude and you're reading, you're like, you're 15, you can't even get a freaking learner's permit in California. Like you stole a motorcycle that has 2,000 horsepower and you commandeer a laser cannon to shoot at your psychic friend. Like and if you keep thinking about it and you keep reminding yourself, and the author does a great job of this, his art doesn't, like Jotaro is 16 and he looks like he's like Arnold Schwarzenegger in JoJo's. Whereas
Mm.
Kaneda is 15, he looks like a 15-year-old kid.
Yeah.
He doesn't get embellished. Like I think I think he looks dorky when he puts on his jumpsuit and he's like, it fits
Oh yeah,
me.
when
And I'm like,
he found his style and he was like
yeah,
looking through all the clothes and stuff.
and I'm like, he's a 15-year-old kid. So that's why I thought it was really important to get him out of the picture, X-nay him for a bit.
Yeah.
So then you get the heaviness of it. Like Tetsuo getting his arc, like you get the rising of the villain, and then you get
Mhm.
Kei's arc of her like surviving and trying to get stuff done. And that's why I think it's funny when Kaneda just gets jammed back into the plot.
Yeah.
Like it's not even like it wasn't even fluid. It was just like out of nowhere. Like I kind of expected it to happen, but
Yeah.
like just funk onto the wall. Like
But he's the wild card that you need in there.
exactly.
But like I love that scene where like he's about to go and like Kay sees him and she's about to go hug him and then Kai just like steals the moment and just jumps on him. Like that was such a
Man's
like a
like
true like
asshole.
that was such a true bro moment. That's what I love. That like Kai is like he's above all of that petty shit that Tetsuo was about, to like power grabs and shit. He's just happy that his friend is alive.
Yeah, he's a reliable guy.
Yeah. Okay, so out of all of like the random supporting characters, so you can't include Kay, you can't include Kaneda, you can't include like the Colonel, but like of the minor supporting characters, who is your favorite?
Let's see. Honestly, I got like a good like yeah when I was reading and the colonel's subordinate showed up again.
Oh, the one that
Like
recognized him?
the guy's like shoot him and he's like Colonel and he's like shoot him and he's like Colonel and then like he shoots the other guy and he's just like Colonel and he's like cool let's go and then he gets shot and he's like my wife died here man.
Yeah,
I'm like
he
I'm like I got to see you again, that's at least cool. Like I
like
was wondering what happened to that guy.
bro, whether you shoot the Colonel or let him live, you're still a red shirt. You're
Or
gonna get God
Yamada,
eventually.
that dude was a beast. Like
Yeah, he died so early.
no, not Yamagata.
Oh,
Yamada.
Yamagata. Oh, Yamada with the George Yamada, the Japanese American soldier.
Yeah, the one
Yeah,
who
he was
put
cool
on the
too.
weird like sex toy looking thing was like, I'm gonna get them with this bio weapon.
I think he and Ryu had a really good dynamic together that I liked.
He honestly was a good pairing with Ryu because when Ryu was the Yamada of his group, he
Mhm.
wasn't that great at it. He just kind of lucked out a lot when
Yeah,
he
he
was
was.
action guy. And then he
Yeah,
gets drunk and then kind of put in the back burner of the plot for a bit. And I'm not sure if he did the whole drunken thing on purpose or like I mean, I don't know if it was just him being because it seemed like he used the whole I'm useless and drunk thing to kind of sneak out a lot. But
mm.
like that was something I kind of thought. But then I was like, well, even if he is just getting drunk all day and like whatever, I'm gonna hang out with this guy from now on because whatever.
Yeah,
But what I don't know, like I feel like the thing I appreciate about Yamato is he made me be able to tolerate Ryu more as a
oh
character
yeah.
because Ryu just obviously like I liked him more in the beginning before he started spiraling and just effing up so much to the point where he was just like I'm just gonna get crushed by something. All
Mm.
right, good. That we're done. We're
Yeah,
done.
he kind of gives up, and his relationship with Yamada kind of revitalizes him a little bit, and it's like, okay, like I can still be a dog in this fight, and I could still like pair myself up with this guy and try and do good in the world. And then when he turns on Yamada, when he figures out that Yamada is gonna kill a bunch of innocent people in order, because he was gonna use the gas, right?
Well, here's the thing though, is like I feel like Ryu kind of by that point was just kind of trying to use Yamada to feel better about himself up until like, okay, this was fun up until you want to use a bioweapon, and Yamada's like, look, we've tried lasers
Mm.
and it didn't kill the kid.
Yeah.
We
It's
need to
almost
do
like
something.
it's almost like
They were
Ryu.
literally sending in like a bunch of young soldiers. They make it a point, like the Americans are like, I don't know why we're doing this. They're like, they're the only guys we could send in. They're like, but they're so young. They're like, they're taking the risk in order to stop Akira. And like they're going to go meet up with Yamada. Like it was a military operation to try and assassinate Kira. Like that
Mhm.
was a focal point because of how big of a threat. I mean, his second in command just went and blew a hole through the moon. They didn't even say the moon just had a big crater in it. They said he blew a hole through the moon, clear through. So like, of course they're gonna be like, look, like a whole city to take rid of this guy, whether it's moral or ethical or not. It's just the point is Yamada's got his goal, just like how the colonel always said. He was like, look, I think as a soldier, you think as a scientist. And that's where we come to you. That's a thing that's constantly pointed out is every character is like, I think like this way, and you think like that way. That's why we don't see eye to eye. And you see that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
That's why Canadian is great, because he honestly doesn't give a shit. He's just like,
Yeah.
whoopie doo. Like, I don't
he,
care,
he
man.
thinks like a 15-year-old kid that's the leader of a biker gang.
Yeah. So essentially, like, that's why when Ryu and Yamada get into it, and Ryu's just like, but we got to be the heroes. Yamada kind of puts him in his place, like, kid gloves are off, dude. Like, we got to kill Akira.
Yeah,
Like,
Ryu's like too idealistic for his own good, and I think that's why he turns to alcohol, because he pictures himself the hero as his own story, and when reality doesn't conform to that and things start becoming morally gray, he can't really handle it.
what do you mean the 15-year-old's the one that's on the poster? What?
uh okay, so do you want to know who my favorite of like all of the minor characters are?
Okay.
The Birdman.
Oh yeah, Birdman.
That was the moment where I'm like,
My
okay.
favorite character killed him, so
Just knocked him off of the thing. It's like you'd think his psychic powers would have saved him a little bit, but no.
I
But
think the
like,
psychic powers worked a little bit kind of like hockey in One Piece, where it's like you only get certain kinds. That's why
Yeah.
Tetsuo and the kids were kind of impressive, was because they had a decent amount.
yeah, exactly. You can kind of like you got to choose your skill tree. You can't really have the telekinesis and the telepathic ability and like the omniscience all at the same time unless you're like Akira or Tetsuo. But no, that's like Birdman to me was like the most like Mad Max thing of just this like random character in this wasteland that has this one job to like stand and wear this
Is their PA
blindfold.
system?
Yeah. And I could never figure out if he actually had a third eye or if it was just like drawn on.
No, it was just he just put a bandana on.
Yeah,
Or
yeah, the
painted
bit
it on his forehead or something. Yeah, he wore a bandana over the top of his head.
as
which makes it even-
representative of him being like the all-seeing third eye dude.
Well,
but
then we
really-
can't forget about his best friend.
Oh,
What
yeah,
was his name? He had a funny name.
yeah.
Let's see.
It was
just-
the Plantation Man or something. The
Hey,
Eggplant
the
Man.
eggplant man.
Yeah.
Yeah. I am the eggplant man. I will break
Yeah.
your heart.
He's like, weren't you friends with Birdman? And he's like, our relationship ended when he did.
Yeah, essentially. That's the crazy thing too, is like it just starts out with like bad event happens, and then Tetsuo shows up and he's just like, I have psychic powers, and follow me. And then
Yeah.
people were like, okay. And they essentially, because what's funny is it goes Mad Max in the manga, but then in the movie, when I was watching that, it was like protesting and riots. It seemed more akin to like stuff going on nowadays with the more political climate of it. Whereas the movie went more just scientific to, I mean, it seemed like the manga was less political than the film.
Yeah.
In a
I think
certain
so.
way.
Wait, was it? I feel like the manga was a little bit more.
I mean, they
political.
both have they both have themes of like criticizing like, human experimentation, how that's immoral. And then, it also gets into the fact that like, well, when you make the picture so big, does it really matter what happens to a few people and stuff like that?
yeah.
And then, but like in the film and the manga, I feel, have separate themes going for it. They're very similar, but they're different. Like, they're both spiders, but one's like a tarantula and the other's a jumping spider. Like, it's like I feel like the film kind of more neatly packages. I don't know. The film seems a little. I don't know. Which one did you feel was a little bit more optimistic with it, like, thematically?
I feel like probably the manga, just because of its ending where they create this kind of like autonomous like state that's trying to run itself without Akira, and they're sort of using Akira's memory to like to preserve the society that they have going and rebuild, and they want to like keep Americans and other governments out of it. And I feel like the only reason I say the manga is just because of that last panel where they're driving down and you see Neo Tokyo like rebuilt, almost like this hopeful vision of what the future could be. And I feel like that was like a surprisingly optimistic note to end on.
And you get to see like the ghost of Tetsuo and
Yeah.
Yamagata do one last ride.
Yeah, that was nice.
I like to think of that as like the little like JoJo's like guys in the clouds kind of shit.
Yeah, or the Force Ghosts or whatever. It's all kind of the same idea.
Yeah. And I mean ultimately both are about, it's like very similar to Neon Genesis where it's like really big philosophical concept. Like they're trying to create a whole nother universe, a big bang.
Mhm.
And you're like, okay, yeah, this is about 15-year-old biker gang leader
Yeah.
leading into that. Little domino and the end big domino is like, creating an entire universe. And the first one's like, let's go get drugs.
Yeah. Well, as far as politics go, the biggest, the most analogous.
It was made in the 80s, like Reagan
Exactly,
era.
and the most analogous series to me would be Watchmen, where
Yeah.
Watchmen's very similarly political in that it portrays this kind of state that's not really that far off from our own future, that these tragic events happened, and kind of like watching the world sort of trying to recover from those, and how the political factions and the concerns of the society differ from our own reality just based on what happened in that reality's history, and trying to logically figure out what kind of government would exist after, well, in Akira's case, something like Akira exists, in Watchmen's case, something like Dr. Manhattan exists.
Very similar.
Very similar, yeah. And
Now,
the
I mean,
whole,
you could honestly put them in the same universe. It wouldn't clash too hard.
oh
Like,
god, I like to pretend that all the Watchmen stuff is happening in the United States while all of the Akira stuff is happening.
the people on the boat going to Japan to deal with Akira, like, nah, I'd rather go and do this. I don't want to deal with that. There's some
Yeah.
guy with like a weird mask and
Yeah, I'm
blue
not.
dude.
Yeah, giant squid just attacked New York. We're good off of that.
Like friggin' Dr. Manhattan shows up on the moon as Tetsuo's blowing a hole through. He's like, I'll just go to the Mars. I'll go Mars. I guess the spot's taken.
Yeah.
It's
Oh god.
yeah, I don't know. I think it's definitely one of the most visually memorable, like most visually memorable series I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's iconic.
Yeah, like Berserk level. He'll spend like half a chapter just showing an explosion go off,
Mhm.
and just like how powerful it is and the scale of it and how it could start so tinily, and then
Yeah.
so vast, and the fact that he takes the care to do that shows like the film aspect of his writing. But I
And
don't know,
that's another thing that Yusuke Murata does so well in One Punch Man, of just using several pages of a chapter to show the impact of one singular event.
new chapter coming out, 12 pages long, 10 of them are of an asteroid just slowly taking form. So the next chapter, there's going to be an asteroid and it's big,
Mhm.
but it looks good.
Yeah. But yeah, another series that it reminded me of a lot, especially in the post-apocalyptic segments, it reminded me of The Stand, the Stephen King
Yeah.
book. Yeah, where it's like you have like the old lady that's kind of allied with the good guys, and like people are kind of rallied around her, and then you have the more anarchic society that's rallied around this like god figure, and the two sides are at conflict with each other. And Stephen King was doing much more of like a heaven, hell, good, evil kind of thing, whereas I feel like the politics of Akira are a lot more gray, because I don't know, like for most of it, I didn't really feel like Miyako was being portrayed as the saintly figure. Like she was like performing miracles and stuff, and her society was functioning better than Tetsuo's society, but she was the one that told Tetsuo to get off the drugs and unlock his full power. Like I feel like a lot of the stuff that happens later on is kind of her fault.
Well, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, we could either you know, make that more into she made a mistake, where
Hmm.
she was overconfident, or she overestimated him.
But you don't get much of what's going on with her internally, so you don't really know that. You see her mostly
Exactly.
from other people's perspectives.
You get more of Nezu's thoughts on what's going on than hers.
Oh yeah.
And that's kind of the weird thing, is she was working with Nezu, who was trying to he Nezu was starting a revolution within the government and was a mole for the revolution, and he worked for her. So
Mhm.
she, in essence, was trying to overthrow the government or assist him, or was at least related to a guy who was trying to overthrow the government, you know?
Yeah,
Because
and
the
and
whole revolutionary stuff, and that's how Ryu and Kei are even involved, is the revolutionary stuff. Like Nezu's secretly funding these revolutionaries and secretly trying to move this agenda,
Mhm.
which ultimately we find out it's to save his ass and to try and
Yeah.
get him as much power as possible. And so that's why Miyako and Ryu are interesting characters, because Nezu's the connecting point between them. So we know why Ryu's involved. He's like I want to be a good guy. I want to save the world. The government's not doing stuff right, so we're gonna do it.
Mhm.
So that's how Nezu's like, cool, I could use you. But Miyako, like, he worked for Miyako, and she was aware of these people he was throwing a revolution with, and she even brings it up later, like, once things get bigger than the revolution, it becomes Akira level big, where it's like, who gives a crap about the revolution? Whoever has Akira wins. And that's why I'm confused by her as a character. She was one of the most confusing characters to try and get, because she
Oh
made a
yeah.
final stand. She filled in Takashi's place. She essentially integrated herself into like the side of the who is like opposite Tetsuo. And I don't know if it was a matter of like the enemy, my enemy is my friend, where Tetsuo, it literally was like everything versus Tetsuo. Like at a
Yeah.
certain point, it was really easy for a lot of these characters to probably get together, because it literally, like, he shows up to the, I think the line that makes it pretty much kind of made it for me was when he shows up in the Americans room on the ship, and he's like, I just want to see how my fan club was doing, what you guys were talking about. And I'm like, dude, everybody in the freaking world hates you other than Akira. Like, he's the only person, and your girlfriend, that's it.
Oh
Your
yeah.
girlfriend and Akira.
Yeah, you're right.
And
And that's the whole thing with like it just kind of shows that as
oh, and Kaneda.
yeah.
He doesn't hate him. He's taking responsibility for one of his subordinates killing another one of his subordinates, and one of his friends killing another one of his friends.
Yeah.
But ultimately, he always, if he's not directly trying to kill Tetsuo and Tetsuo is getting attacked by something, he'll be like, "Are you okay, dude? Yeah. All right. Cool. Laser."
And that's one of the things that I love about Kaneda and Tetsu's relationship, because like no matter how off the wall godlike Tetsuo becomes in his mind powers, Kaneda still got that thing where it's like he's my dog, I gotta kill him. That kind of thing where it's
This
like
isn't
he's
fair. Stop using your psychic powers and fight me like a man.
that was great.
I love that line. Like, I was just like, freaking Kaneda, like, he's just like, I'd kick your ass if you didn't have psychic powers. And Tetsuo's like, what's that even mean?
uh yeah, their relationship is so hilarious just because of the fact that like Kaneda is still kind of the last person that could really get to Tetsuo, and like Kaneda's not operating off of everybody else's logic. He's still operating off of that logic of like, you're my subordinate. Like, I got to take you out. You did bad stuff, and I got to bear the responsibility of it.
Yeah, well, I feel like he makes it that that's his reasoning, is that, but I think deep down it was because no matter how big of a piece of shit Tetsuo is, I think they were just that good of friends. Like,
Yeah.
it came down, like you said, the whole dog thing. Like,
Yeah.
he's literally like, man, you fucked up. Like, you
Mhm.
fucked up bad, man. Like, even Kai seemed like he was a little bit quicker to jump it, but I mean, they made it pretty early on that for like that Tetsuo was starting to get angsty, be kind of a dickhead even before he got psychic powers. Like, I like how the film does that too. Like, Tetsuo goes out of his way after an enemy gets fallen. Like, he's off his bike, he's disarmed, and he
Mhm.
goes out of his way to still attack him. like
Yeah,
very viciously.
because his pride was hurt by that
Yeah.
guy.
And it's just like crazy that, they go and they search, the gang goes and search for Tetsuo after, and they find him just beating the crap out of this dude.
Yeah.
And like, they're like, you're gonna kill that guy. And I'm like, oh well, I thought he was already dead when I saw the blood after he hit the dude going at like 50 miles an hour with a pipe.
Yeah.
But like that, it was one of those things where the film showed that Tetsuo was a lot more unhinged even before he got the powers.
Oh,
He was
definitely.
he was whereas the manga, it's kind of like you sympathize more with Tetsuo because you there's not enough evidence to show whether Tetsuo was truly evil until his mind got affected, or else, because I that's one thing I wanted to talk about is like the emphasis on the fact that drugs were being used. This was the 80s, so their understanding of drugs isn't quite the same as ours understanding of them is now.
Yeah.
And I mean, come on, and Gantz, like they show a guy smoking a joint and another dude doing heroin. They're like,
And they equated the two.
Weed.
That's so hilarious. Whereas like normal, like if you were to like remake that scene, it would be like the guy would be smoking PCP or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, and it's like one of those things where, I'm guessing the pills had to have been some kind of like methamphetamine based pill in the
Yeah,
Akira,
they even say that they were amphetamines that they were
'cause,
using. It was it actually, you know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of A Clockwork Orange and the whole milk bar and stuff.
yeah.
Get you riled up for a bit of the old ultra violence, and the relationship between Kaneda and Tetsuo is very reminiscent of Alex and Georgie in A Clockwork Orange. Like and Pete was very much like a similar character to Kai. Like I loved, like that was the vibe that I was getting from the gang, like almost like a less brutal Clockwork
They're a
Orange
quirky
vibe.
bunch of assholes. Like they're not good
Yeah,
people at all.
they're just
Like,
delinquents. They're
yeah, they're
just
delinquents.
shithead delinquents that are going around unsupervised and just like fighting people because it's like the
Well,
world's
they're
basic.
like drugged out.
Yeah, they're drugged out and the world's kind of ending. Things are sort of up in the air. Like this horrible tragedy happened 20 years ago and we're still like dealing with the fallout of that. And it's like, what else are we gonna do? Like, what's the point of getting an education and going out and trying to be productive members of society when we don't even know if there's gonna be a society here tomorrow? And that leads to the whole crime and violence thing. Like that's one of my favorite things about the movie of there's that one junkie character that's always hanging out in front of the school that they keep kind of going back to.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, just kind of showing like sort of a representation of what the average person in that society looks like right now.
Well, and it's crazy how like that shit was made in 88, and like
Mhm.
people could watch that now and still it could still resonate, because really, like, and that's the crazy thing is like that's why I kind of appreciate manga, because we get bombarded with our political stuff, especially from the 80s. It's like Reaganomics everywhere.
Mhm.
It's kind of refreshing to see other, people's take on their kind of issues. And I feel like Akira as like a looking glass onto like what this author, may, I don't know what his reasoning was for it, but it's insane to think that, or not insane. It's interesting to think that he first took characters that were delinquents, added in the fact that they, one of them did enough drugs to become a super psychic, to counter a government, to also make America scared, hurt the moon, and then make a new universe. Like, and I'm just like, this started with drugs.
Yeah.
It literally started. Their gang's called the Capsules. That'd be like being called the Crack.
But it just kind of shows, even at a young age, what you can accomplish if you just do a lot of drugs.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
especially
You can create
like,
a new universe.
and it's why like the manga was cool too, is because like while Tetsuo was like either super pilled out or going through withdrawals, I feel like Tetsuo's character is like, for people that go through like addiction and withdrawals and stuff, like he's a very good character to look at for that stuff, because like it's portrayed pretty well. Like, him and Kaneda both did drugs, but Tetsuo was the one who they're like, oh, Tetsuo likes drugs, like,
Yeah.
and
Because there are people that do cocaine and then there are people that do cocaine.
and I think they point that out later, when they start just cranking out soldiers. with psychic powers. They're just like, do a lot of these pills. If you don't die, then you'll have psychic powers. And it makes sense why Tetsuo had psychic powers. It wasn't because he was born innately more special than anyone else. It was the fact that he was so broken and depressed and messed up in all these different ways and angry. They mention it in the beginning a lot, but it's something you kind of forget and gloss over. He did a shit ton of drugs, like way more than the rest of them. And I think that's what gave him those powers, whether he knew it or not, was like the fact that he did a lot of those drugs. And apparently like the stuff that you get on the streets very mellow, whereas the stuff that you get from the scientists is like 5 times the potency. And they even say everybody has Akira's powers. It's just tiny in everyone else.
Yeah.
And so essentially it kind of points in a weird direction where you're like, so if everybody's on the pill, we could all be part of the hive mind, and
like you don't die.
Yeah. I love the guy with the glasses that he was like one of the first 3 dudes that they do to make him, and he just still somehow kept in it. Like every time I'm like, oh dude, he dead. No, glasses guy's still around. Oh,
which one was glasses guy?
He was one of the psychics Tetsuo made.
I remember
he was
him.
just a recurring goon. And I was just like, how is he still around? Same with that one random guy who like put on a bandana super epically and went, hey-ya, and like blew up a dude's head, and just like you just see a close-up of his face like I did it. That's what I love too. It wasn't flashy. It was flashy where it counted, and then it was rough and just anticlimactic in other ways or instances, like when Kaneda, the laser just not working right in both the film and the manga. Like he shoots the guy point blank, and the guy's like, oh fuck, I'm gonna be lasered, and then he's like, huh, and he's like, damn, ran out of battery. I'm like, that's such a dark joke, because the guy's like relieved he didn't just get like cut in half by a laser cannon, and Kaneda's disappointed he didn't just blast this dude in half with a laser gun. He's 15. We gotta reiterate, this is a 15-year-old kid.
Kids in Neo Tokyo, they grow up so fast.
Oh, I know, right? These are 2019-year-old, kids in 2019 too.
Yeah.
He was born in 2004.
I know, dude. The fact that kids born in 2004 are like late teens now is kind of insane.
That's how time works.
I don't like it.
Every minute in Africa, a minute passes.
Okay, so I watched it with Geronimo, and after we finished it, because he's got a big Akira poster on the wall, he's a fan. So we watched it, and then afterward, I put on the Trapper Keeper episode of South Park. I'm like, they make fun of this in South Park, right? And he's like, no. And I'm like, here, this episode makes fun of literally every sci-fi movie, and there's that whole ending scene where like Cartman's the Trapper Keeper, and he's like absorbing stuff, and he's got the bad pie.
I actually thought about that episode this morning.
Really?
Because I was like, oh,
they were doing Akira. And I love the episode with all the police psychics, and then at the end when they're all battling each other with their mind powers, but it's not doing anything. And they're like all like trying to like. It was kind of like, I'm not sure if they were doing Akira or they were more like doing scanners, but they were kind of doing that whole like mental powers thing. But these people don't actually know that they don't actually like have mental powers. They just think they do, and they're kind of dicks.
Let's see. One series I read years ago was called Siren.
Oh, I remember
Siren.
I remember Siren. I never read it.
Yeah. And it starts off like the main character is kind of like a Kaneda type, like, oh, I'm just a kid who doesn't give a crap about what people say, blah, blah. And yeah, after I got done with this, I was like, they literally just took the entire Wasteland saga of Akira and just made that into a manga. So that was the whole point of that series, along with like weird time travel stuff.
We might have to do that one later.
It's pretty interesting read. Siren.
So
Agiha, or Ahiga? No, Agiha.
Another thing that I thought was kind of interesting about like the adaptation between the anime and the manga is the fact that the writer Otomo, he had Tetsuo have the same girlfriend, but in completely different contexts between the two mediums. Like it was weird that like he wanted to insert the Kaori character into the film, but like they weren't going to use the post-apocalyptic wasteland stuff for the film. So he had her be like Tetsuo's initial girlfriend when he was in
Yeah.
the biker gang. But then later on, like I was shocked when she showed up in the manga. I'm like, wow, he's actually like reusing this character. This is kind of interesting. Like she doesn't do
Okay.
much, but like it was kind of cool that like
So she wasn't even introduced yet, and then they introduce her.
yeah,
And that's how she so that's interesting because I was like, oh, so the girl that he ends up, you know, bringing into his concubine or whatever, she's just his girlfriend from the beginning because I watched it in a different order.
yeah, because in the manga, like he doesn't know the girl when she comes in. She's just some refugee that like he's like using for his sex harem. But then
Yeah.
in the anime, like he knew her beforehand. Like she was already his girlfriend.
Apparently the guy our guy Katsuhiro Otomo,
Yeah.
he did a whole episode of Space Dandy.
Oh, that's dope. Oh, what
Apparently.
happened to Space Dandy? Is that still on?
No, they did 2 seasons, they called it.
Oh,
But
it's
the thing
probably
about
as
the
long as the joke could last.
well, I mean, it's the guy who did Cowboy Bebop and
Yeah.
Samurai Champloo, so he's known to just do like,
He does
24 episodes and he's done.
the standard 25 episode anime series.
Yeah, pretty much. But I mean, the entire second season, I am pretty sure has a guest animator or guest directors. Like he has people from that worked with Hayao Miyazaki for one episode. It looks just like a Hayao Miyazaki movie. That would be a good series that we could try down the road. It'll be like, it doesn't have a manga, but read it anyways.
Yeah, that episode is going to be called Write the Manga.
Yeah, make the manga.
Yes. But anyway, anything else you want to say about Akira?
I mean, honestly, like it hit a lot of notes and stuff that I like. Like, I like my apocalyptic stuff. I like my crazy sci-fi,
It's like let's lay the blueprint for every future science fiction movie and every future science fiction seinen manga.
Which it's like I benefited from the fact that I was ignorant of its existence for the most part. So I got to see like, oh wow, this is you. Oh, the things that I liked are like your grandkids. Wow, that's pretty cool. Like, so you're the guy that everybody talks about.
So you like really experienced the manga with fresh eyes this time.
Essentially, even though I did have a volume of it, like when I was like a freshman, sophomore in high school, like, I totally just didn't continue reading it because I just want to read it fully in print. And then I never went and got the rest. So it just kind of went into my incomplete then. And then, with this stuff going on, being on the subject matter, we did it. And I was just like, like I like Siren. That was cool. And, bringing even Katakayo Hitman Reborn takes notes from Akira. Dude, like they have a whole dystopic future arc in that series that I'm like, wonder what you like. Cyberpunk, Mafia stuff. Yeah, they have Pokeballs. That's a weird one. But Akira is mixed in with all that stuff, and it's probably all over the place, like JoJo's. Or I think probably JoJo's, Kaneko Man, and Akira are probably some of the big bulk of like people like it. Those are probably the standards, like Superman, Batman, Spider-Man.
Yeah.
From what I'm seeing, it's just crazy that this one guy could do like it's crazy how you could have a series where it's like I love Full Metal Alchemist manga, but I like the original anime a bit more. Not like I don't like Brotherhood, but I like getting a different take. But then it's like with the Bokurano anime, I didn't quite like that as much as the manga because, and it's funny, we did that, then we do this, where it's like that was a series where the manga was made by the guy who actually liked what he wrote, and the anime was made by a guy who didn't like what the guy who wrote. Whereas this one's like, well, I wrote both and I did both, and they're still different. But I'm like sitting there, and as I was watching and seeing all these differences, I wasn't like, why do you leave that out? Why did he do this? I'm just like, so it's interesting what additional things he wants to show us, these different angles, like the way he wants to ease into it, focus it's really cool to see this different perspective on the same material
Yeah.
from the same guy. It could be a little bit redundant to a degree,
but they're two complete visions adapted for two completely different mediums, and he did a fantastic job of like doing all of the things he wanted to do separately, using the strengths of each medium, not just trying to like copy paste one to the other. It's like, we're doing a film, we have to structure it like a film. I want to put these moments in, but we have to have different things leading up to these moments, and we have to have different ways of getting to these moments, and different like ways of doling out information. Whereas like with the manga, it's much more like we can dole out the information at a much more leisurely pace, add a little bit more flavor in the margins and stuff, restructure some events, but like the basic plot, storyline, and themes are the same between the two. It's just they use each of their mediums to the absolute full capacity of visionary storytelling. And that's kind of incredible. Like the fact that one guy was able to do both.
It's definitely like the fact, like the anime, like, I get that it's like super acclaimed.
Mm-hmm.
No, I get that. I get
That's
why.
great.
It's really fucking well done. Like really well done. Like it's like you got dated series, and then you got like aged classic series.
Yeah.
And it comes with the budget. Apparently it's the most expensive anime movie up until that point, until Kiki's Delivery Service. But I mean, you could kind of say that, like, Akira is one of the reasons people continued throwing money at anime. And
also, why the hell did Kiki's Delivery Service cost so much money? That's what I want to know.
It's just like, we've seen Dragon Ball Super like in theaters, like, and then we see Dragon Ball Super, the anime, and you'll literally have panels where it looks like somebody just drew an outline of Goku's face and then put a squiggle and another squiggle, because they're like, well, we got to get this out in a week.
Yeah, the animation is terrible.
Whereas with like the movie, they're able to be
they could take real time on it. But my question is that, like, if you sit down somebody, show them Akira, and then show them Kiki's Delivery Service, and then ask them which one they think cost more. Like I love Kiki's Delivery Service. It's a fantastic movie, but like it's one of those ones where I'm like, okay, I don't really understand why this movie was the most expensive movie
different
in
companies.
Its time. I guess so. Maybe just.
And Hayao Miyazaki is a name that comes with. It'd be like,
his movies demand complete perfection. It's just like, it's just funny to like look at those two movies and be like, Kiki's Delivery Service, the one about the teenage witch, is the one that costs more.
Look at the film Lock. I think that's an excellent film to look at for budgets. Like, it's just Tom Hardy sitting in a car the entire time. That movie.
But it didn't cost more than Avatar.
No, but that's the thing. It would have cost more, though, if it came out after Venom.
Because Tom Hardy would have had a. I don't know. Nobody liked Venom.
I don't know. Just I feel like, they're just because budgets aren't always exact, and I think part of it too is like, well, how much did they spend on their real estate, to rent the animation offices? There's probably a lot more to it than I understand. We gotta get that guy who does the One Piece stuff in on this. Be like, how
Randy
much?
Troy.
Like, can you help us out, Randy Troy? Break down Kiki's Delivery Service versus Akira. Like, I'm sure.
Shout out to a fantastic YouTuber.
Oh yeah, no, he's too busy. He's got his Pepe Silvia wall of who's gonna be Mihawk and.
But yeah, like Meet the Fockers cost like $120 million, and that was just the price tags of Dustin Hoffman and Robert De Niro and Meryl Streep. Not Meryl Streep. Who's the other? Not Barbra Streisand. Barbra Streisand. Yeah. No, it's just getting those like huge name actors to appear in that movie costed $100 million. Whereas like most of it's just like
people did get their Kizaru being played by Will Smith in the One Piece live action. It'd be like, all right, well, everybody's going to be a C or D grade list actor after the 15 minutes of screen time we get out of this guy.
Exactly. You throw the huge name actors in small roles, and then like the actual like meaty parts are for the you pepper the big name actors in there for gravitas, but like The series itself should be able to be carried by unknowns.
Now-
Kind of like with Harry Potter, where it's like Harry Potter was just like a bunch of unknown kids with like Alan Rickman and Maggie Smith and Michael Gambon and all of these like huge name British actors.
So they've talked about making Akira into a live action.
Yeah,
And
it's
I was
been in
thinking-
development hell for a long time.
And that's why what I've been thinking of. I was like, well, one, the only person I could think that could possibly, well, maybe I could see Robert Rodriguez pulling off Akira, and I could see the Wachowskis doing Akira.
But you know who it's going to be though, right? It's coming out 2022. It's going to be Taika Waititi.
Is he really doing it?
He's doing Akira.
Oh my God. You know what's funny? I don't know why, but in the back of my head, I don't know why I thought of Jojo Rabbit.
Mm-hmm.
As I was thinking about like live action Akira, like I don't know why Jojo Rabbit popped in my head, but maybe I saw it somewhere. But that's amazing. If Taika Waititi probably is, I don't know. Actually, that's a really good pick right there, because he does
like
care. He cares about the source materials, the things he does, and he's a nerd, so I trust that.
Just based on watching like Thor Ragnarok, the movie's going to look beautiful.
Carl Urban as the Colonel.
Yes, that would be so dope. I would love that.
God, if it isn't the psychic cunt.
Fuck. Okay, and you know what? Let's cast this movie right now. That's what I want to do.
So we got Carl Urban as the Colonel.
Yeah.
All right, but the problem is like, well, if it's in America, they go really make him 15. They're probably
they're
like
gonna age him
seniors
up
in high
a little
school,
bit.
tiny bit, like 16, 17.
Yeah.
I like it more if they kept him at 15. Like, really, you're sitting there like, well, what would you expect out of giving a 15-year-old a laser cannon? Like, for real. Like, hold it to it. And you know what? Taika Waititi did Jojo Rabbit right there, using kids to do serious stuff.
By the time it's released, you could probably, the Jojo Rabbit kid might be old enough to play like Kai or something.
The fat kid could be the clown guy.
Yeah.
The one who's just like, well, I'm going to go give my mom a hug now. And after like Big and Total War, the little chunky kid with the glasses.
Yeah, I remember the chunky kid. He was great too.
Well, there you go.
Yeah,
Wait.
Taika Waititi Akira.
Man, that's fantastic. Actually, that's some good news.
Yeah, that's
like
that's
with
good
all
to
the
hear.
crazy news going on. That's like all right. Yeah, all right.
Yeah, I can see that. I like that.
I'm not opposed. I mean, sure. Like I went with Robert Rodriguez because he did Alita, and
Which I still have to see.
It's fantastic. And the series Alita is also really good. I could see it's not quite up to Akira good, but I'd probably say it's almost as Akira good. I like Alita, and it has a lot of spinoffs too. But
Nice.
the core series is pretty solid from what I've read. I read it after watching the movie, not all of it, but it's pretty cool. The whole premise of the world's pretty cool too. I could see. I don't know which one came out first, if they came out around the same time. For some reason, I want to know what magazine specifically did all these. Because like whoever banked in on all the weirdo like Neil Gaiman type manga artists, like they're probably rolling in it right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Akira was published in Weekly Young magazine, and then
For adults.
Yeah, I know. They use the word young for like seinen magazines, which I've always thought is weird. I don't know.
It's a magazine that has pinup models in it. It's like a Playboy manga magazine. Why don't we get these over here?
I know, that'd be dope. I want to see.
Hey,
some,
and it had GTO in it.
Oh, nice.
Well, right there. That will be an episode we'll do eventually, is GTO, because
Okay, I love the name of this magazine, but Alita Battle Angel was published in Business Jump.
Wow.
Yeah, this isn't some bullshit Young Jump, Shonen Jump stuff. This is business.
This is Wall Street Bets manga right here.
This is the magazine that Don Draper reads.
Oh, nice. Cut that guy's head off. He deserved it.
Anyway, so next week we're gonna be doing One Punch Man. Art by Yusuke Murata, story by one,
Art also by one if you read the other one.
which I
There are
will
two
try
versions.
to do, but my eyes might hurt a little bit. So we're going to do that as a two-parter. So next week, we're going to be talking about season 1. Week after that, we're going to be talking about season 2. That is it for our Akira episode. Watch the film if you haven't, but more importantly, read the manga.